Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, Congressman Brad Sherman of California. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much. Paul Ryan, let me begin with you. You were at this Chamber of Commerce Jobs for America Summit. Can you just tell us right at the top what you told the conference today?
Well, it was very simple. The moderator, Mort Kondracki, asked me, are we going to have a double dip or a lost decade? I don't know about a double dip. That's possible, but I think we're doing everything we could ever do to produce a lost decade. We're practicing Japanese economics. We're borrowing way beyond reason. Our debt doubles in 5 years, triples in 10 years. The top marginal tax rate from the laws passed in this Congress goes to 44.8%. You throw state income tax rates on top of that, and that means small businesses, S-corps, LLCs are going to get hit with an above 50% tax rate in most states. We're raising capital gains taxes. We're raising dividends taxes. So we're increasing taxes on capital, on job creation, entrepreneurial activity. We're borrowing ungodly sums. So we're going to put high pressure on interest rates. And we have a carry trade with our banks, which if interest rates start going up in the short term, or even we have some fast growth, then banks are underwater and we have our own lost decade scenario. And so what I said is we should go and do the opposite. Low taxes, sound money, certainty with tax policy, regulatory policy. Those are the things we ought to do to be growing out of this recession and creating jobs.
All right, Mr. Sherman, you heard Paul Ryan on this. And Brad, let me just ask you, look, there's a big story in the Financial Times today about a crisis of confidence with President Obama. There's a business revolt against Mr. Obama, as you know. Second, new polls out today show plunging popularity. The vast majority believe Obama is too liberal, and in an astounding poll, 55% believe he is actually a socialist. Now, I want to get your reaction to those polls, to the business revolt, and to Paul Ryan's argument that this could be a lost decade for American jobs.
Well, I wasn't invited to the U.S. Chamber event. I get along extremely well with the San Fernando Valley Chambers of Commerce, but the U.S. Chambers never invited me to anything other than a hanging, and I wasn't sure whether I was the guest of honor. As to polls, it is clear that in the legitimate polls, the president polls below 50% as to whether he's trusted. Democrats in Congress are at least 10 points behind the president, and Republicans in Congress are 10 or 15 points below Democrats in Congress. So it's very clear that people are angry. They've lost faith in our institutions, and that's because they're living in the worst recession of my lifetime, and I'm even older than he is. So I suspect, though, that reinstituting the policies that were practiced for 8 years and drove us into the biggest ditch of our lifetimes is probably not the right way to go.
Yeah, but Brad, I don't mean to interrupt, but look, you know as well as I do, the generic polls show the Republicans have a lead for the House. The Senate may be a toss-up. Mr. Gibbs of the White House basically said that. And I want to ask you, it all revolves around the stimulus package, the large amount of spending, regulations, and taxing. This is not only businesses' complaint, this is the ordinary voters' complaint, judging by these polls. Let me say with this, did the stimulus package fail? Would you like to rewrite it now? And where do we go from here? Because folks want to know how to rescue this lackluster, jobless recovery.
Well, when we passed the stimulus bill, the economy was in free fall. It wasn't sliding, it was dropping vertically. And the stimulus bill and other policies stabilized us. Of course, that's not enough. But we shouldn't reinstitute the policies that'll put us into another free fall. As to the stimulus bill, there were two problems with it. First, it wasn't paid for, and second, it was too small. What we need is to be able to turn on the spigot during a recession, and at the same time, we need to pay down the debt during the good times. We had some good years under President Bush, and we didn't pay down the debt during those good years, and that set us up for the catastrophe that we have now.
Paul Ryan, is there a capital strike? You see businesses sitting on a pile of cash, maybe $2 trillion. They're not investing. They're not creating jobs. Amity Shlaes calls it a capital strike, not unlike the 1930s. Is there such a thing? And what might your solutions be to create jobs and get this thing going?
There is such a thing. I talked to the largest banker in Wisconsin just the other day, and their lines of credit that are open for large businesses are being tapped at about 11%, the lowest ever in recorded history since they've been opening up lines of credits for businesses. So yes, there's a capital strike, and there's a capital strike because look what's coming ahead. You've got 2 waves of big tax increases. You've got much higher interest rates in the future because of the borrowing binge we have, because of our monetary policy, and then all this regulatory uncertainty. Every week that goes by, there's a new launch of unpredicted regulations coming from the executive branch, and so they're sitting on their hands because they don't know if they should take a risk, if they should hire people, if they should deploy capital, because they don't know if they can get return on their investment. So what should we do? We should have certainty. Certainty on tax rates that they're not going to go up. We should have certainty on borrowing by locking in real spending control, real spending and entitlement reforms to show that we're getting our debt under control, that there will be no temptation to monetize our debt. And we got to make sure that these regulations don't come from out of left field like we're seeing all of the time. Things like cap and trade, if it goes down in the Senate, what we're hearing is the EPA is going to do it anyway. Those kinds of regulations are scaring businesses, especially manufacturers in Wisconsin, and it's stifling capital. There is capital out there. It's on the sidelines. It's not being deployed. We need to give entrepreneurs and businesses low taxes, sound money, a system and a plan to pay off debt so that we know that we're not going to have ungodly high interest rates around the corner. That, to me, is what worked before. The Keynesian doctrine that Brad's talking about, I think it's been proven to fail. I think what we need is real fiscal responsibility and conservatism in the form of low taxes, sound money, and lower spending to get this debt under control.
Brad, let me just ask you, you may have seen the editorial today in the Journal. This new financial regulation bill, I mean, talk about banks and credit and regulations. The 2,300-page bill has 243 new regulations over 10 agencies. Now, I don't know, maybe the big banks can buy themselves out. If I were a community banker, I would be scared to death. I wouldn't make another single loan. 243 new regulations. They may go out of business just to hire people to figure out what the regulations are, Brad.
The fact is the community bankers have not taken that reaction to the bill. The fact is that this bill ends TARP. It returns over $240 billion to the Treasury that otherwise would be available for expenditure or investment under the TARP program. And that reason alone may justify a vote for it. But as to the fact that the bill is long, how many pages are there in the mortgage files of any bank? How many pages are there in the various contracts in our credit card agreements?
Well, Brad, how many pages are there in the Bible?
Depends on what edition you have. It also depends on whether...
I think you got more financial regulation pages than you got in the King James Version of the Bible. I'm sorry.
That may be, but the thing is that the Bible is for the believers, and many of the laws we pass have to control sinners who are looking for loopholes.
All right.
So if the Bible had been written for those who wish to sin, it would have to be longer.
We're going to leave it there on that spiritual note, because as Jack Kemp, the late, great Jack Kemp, used to always tell me, gentlemen, in the book of Genesis, it said 1/5 taxation, 20% should be the top rate. Paul Ryan, thank you ever so much. Brad Sherman, thank you.
Good to be with you.